I stepped through a portal and I woke up and thought, ooh, that'd be a good start for a book. You're basically a god in your own universe, aren't you? I've got to write another book.
Hello, I'm author Hannah Lynn, and welcome to WACI, the podcast where we celebrate amazing female authors doing incredible things with their writing. Hopefully, it will inspire you guys to do a little bit of writing yourselves too. Who knows? So today, I would like to introduce my wonderful guest, the Miss Rosalind Tate.
Hiya.
Hello, Rosalind. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really
Well,
appreciate
thank
it.
you for having me on the show.
We are Rosalind writes some amazing stories, and a mixture of sort of YA fantasy, aren't they? So could you just tell us a little bit about your writing journey that's got you to where you are now?
Well, like a lot of people, I always sort of thought vaguely that I'd write a book, but I was a very late starter. I served in the military, I had a family, then I worked as a lawyer, and then I sort of woke up one morning and thought, gosh, if I'm going to write this book, I really have to get on with it, do it now, or I'll never do it. And that's sort of how I started. I've always loved fantasy, and I had a dream that I was back at university and I stepped through a portal and I woke up and thought, ooh, that'd be a good start for a book. And that was the start of the first book of the Shorten Chronicles. That was published in 2020, and the fifth book in the series is being published this year, and the sixth book, with any luck, is being published next year.
Amazing. So you've really been going at it since you started doing this in 2023. Did you like set yourself a deadline? Because you said, right, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. Did you like say, okay, I'm going to give myself a year to write this book or 6 months or anything like that?
No, no, I didn't. I very stupidly, because my mother was a writer, she wrote historical novels. I thought, how hard can it be? I've got an English degree, for goodness sake. So I just wrote this absolutely awful book and I sent it off to this editor and she came back with this like report. And I had to have gin and lie down for a week because basically said it's absolute rubbish. And she said, go away to a creative writing course and learn how to write a book. And that was a terrible shock.
But
So I had to really start from scratch.
I think that's so important because when I was like the same, right? I'm not going to be a one day I'll write a book person. I'm going to do this finally. I started absorbing all the creative writing courses that I could. And I think some people out there just think, oh, it just happens. Either you can write a book and you can write a great book, or you can't. But actually, you need tools to do it. You need
Yeah,
to learn how to structure things. And I am a massive advocate for learning your craft, for get taking all the
absolutely.
opportunities. So you wouldn't pick up an instrument and expect to be able to play it without having a few some lessons first. So
Correct.
no,
Correct.
so I
I
think
don't know
that's
why people think it's easy. I don't know why. But then, of course, if it was easy, everybody would write a book, wouldn't they?
yes. And the thing
But
is,
they
it
don't. And if
obviously
you're watching this and you've written only one, you've still done brilliantly.
yes, absolutely getting to the end of it and writing one. But I'm assuming you've found that it's got easier the more that you've written now.
It it gets easier as long as you step back sometimes and reevaluate what you've done. It gets quicker, but sometimes I have to be reminded by my editor. In fact, only yesterday I got a report back on book five, and I'm going to be spending about 3 weeks rewriting quite a lot of it. Luckily, she has looked at it from a completely objective point of view. She's an excellent editor, and unfortunately, everything she tells me is correct. So I've got a lot of work to do.
But that's good because you know it's going to be the right thing. And I think, again, there's an important lesson there in that, the kill your darlings, the things that you want to have in
Yep,
that book because you think they're the most important things to another reader or to the readers. They might not be. They might be utterly
true,
insignificant. You don't need that. I mean, I misunderstood
completely
the kill
true.
your darlings and just kept killing my favorite characters instead in the first few books. But,
So
um,
hard, isn't it? So hard. I've got a magnificent one-liner. I'm going to try and see if I can get in somewhere else.
I know I had the first line of my first book. I desperately wanted to keep. And I can still remember what it was. Because if it was, is anything more Circean than hindsight? And this was like, makes me laugh now that I do Greek mythology and that Circe is one of the massive ones. But you know, my husband, everyone who read it is like, you don't want that line in there. I was like, I do. And then I had a meeting with Penguin about the book, and they were like, you don't want that line in there. I was like, oh. So
So
hey,
hard.
oh, it's all about learning, right? So you've
Yes.
already told us that your first book was inspired by a dream, which is
Yeah, a bit weird.
incredible. I love it. A little bit weird, but you know, it's all got to be. Are there any other sources of inspiration that might be a little bit wacky there, or just sources of inspiration generally that you've used?
I suppose the most wacky inspiration, which wouldn't surprise any of my readers, is that one of the main characters was inspired by my dog, a Labradoodle, big Labradoodle, called Bella. I haven't changed anything about her personality. You know how they have at the front of books saying, these are all imaginary and so on, imaginary characters. Well, she's not. She's completely taken there. Um, but I've made her even more special than a regular dog. And of course, as an author, you're basically a god in your own universe, aren't you? So in the third book, I've given her a human lifespan because I can. I
Oh,
just wish I could do it for all dogs.
oh, bless. I love that. Absolutely love it. So in terms of writing, know that you've now written these onto book 6, which is amazing. Do you have any unconventional writing habits that perhaps you partake in? Are you one of these people that locks yourself away
Oh
or
gosh, I wish I could. I get up early to write, 6 o'clock or earlier. And the main reason for that is that everybody else in the household is asleep. But once they'll wake up, they know that I'm not to be disturbed, but inevitably someone's lost their car keys or there's some other minor crisis, and they come and talk to me. And I mean, if you're interrupted, you're dragged out of your world, you're dragged out of the zone, and it will take you 10 minutes, half an hour to get back in, or you might never get back in that day. And I think people who don't write creatively just don't understand this and think you're just being mean to them. That's very difficult.
I think the early mornings are such they're such a savior for like when I was writing working full time as well. That is that quiet, isn't it? There's just a
Yes,
different a peace. And like you said, you know you're not going to be disturbed. And
absolutely.
yeah, that is a special time. So if you're like, oh, when do I have time to write? Can you get up half an hour earlier and have that perfect quiet in your house, particularly now that like sun's out and early
It's
morning?
easier.
It's
It's
easy.
easier.
Okay. So next one, if you could swap the protagonist in your latest book with any character from another author's world, so you could bring another character from another's world into your book, who would it be?
I think it would be if I had to change Sophie, I'd swap her for a protagonist called Kira, who is the main character in Fortune's Fool by Angela Board. Have you come across it?
No, I haven't. No. It's
It's
not.
a high fantasy novel, sort of set in a brutal medieval type world. It was published in 2019 and it came second in the self-published fantasy blog off of the same year. I read the first page of Fortune's Fool on my Kindle and stopped and thought, nope, I've got to read this in a paperback. I want to savor every word because the book itself is superb. It's one of the best high fantasy books I have ever read. And Kira is determined and I don't know, she's sort of steely. I mean, Sophie's quite steely, my Sophie, but she's not as steely as Kira. So I'd swap my Sophie for Kira.
I like that. And I like that you're something in common there. When you read a book and you're like, oh, need it on paperback, this one. Need
Yes.
it in
Well, I
paperback.
don't do it very often. I don't do it very often because I'm really mean, don't want to spend the money. Also, as you can see, I haven't got much space.
The space is an issue we've just discovered to just keep buying more bookshelves, but we're now out of wall space, so I don't know what happens.
You've got to buy a bigger house.
No, I know. We definitely do. Um, so on to book 6. Have there been any points at which you have considered drastically different endings for your book? Could you ever go in and go, oh, maybe I'm going to do this, or maybe I'll do that? Like, do you know how you're ending before you go in?
Yes, I do usually. However, And I certainly do now. I've become much more of a plotter than a
Yeah.
pantster. But when I was struggling with an early draft of Stranded, book one of the Shorten Chronicles, my then editor suggested an incredible twist at the end of the book. It was absolutely genius. But at the time, my thought was, oh no, I've got to write another book. I can't do that. But time passed, and I included it at the end of book two, Escape. And my readers love it, and some of them hate it. Um, Basically, my heroine and her soulmate finally get together at the end of book two. Then the man who's been besotted with Sophie, sort of part of a love triangle, turns up. He's crossed universes to marry her. And although him turning up is a shock, it's also consistent and predictable with hindsight. Um, and yes, of course, then it meant I had to write book three. So it was sort of rod for my own back, really. But no, I can't in fact have the credit for it. Like, it was my then editor who came up with the idea.
But your readers either love it or hate it, did you say, with that
I
one?
don't have a love-hate relationship with it. Basically, I'm torturing my characters. So they go, no.
Oh, I know. We do put them through some stuff, don't we? Like we really drag
We're
them.
very cruel.
I know. Sometimes yeah, feel bad if any of my readers are listening and you know which book I'm talking about that I don't know, I think it's been 7 years since I wrote it. I still get more emails about that one than any other.
You're going to share it?
It's in a series. It's book two of my Peas and Carrots series,
All
and
right.
end it in a way that is brutal and people did not see it coming. And one of my friends is listening to it on audiobook at the minute. And yeah, she was talking about it and she was like, but I didn't think you could. I didn't think you could. And then I started book three and you'd done it. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, it's a sad one. It's a sad one that people have not
Oh
forgiven.
dear.
But hey ho, it was made it memorable. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about writing and how it's harder and you need to get in the zone and things like that. Are there anything you wish that people who haven't written a book knew about publishing or the writing process or any of that?
Gosh, there's so many things. Are you traditionally published completely?
No, I'm a hybrid. I am very much
Hybrid.
a
Okay.
hybrid. Yes.
Okay. Well, you understand then. I mean, basically, my readers, or I don't know, readers in general, or most readers, or some readers, have become accustomed to successful indie writers, publishing 2 books a year, 4 books a year, or even more. Um, and I'm sure it's possible to write wonderful layered stories that fast, but I can't. So my readers get very impatient with me. When's the next book? And some of them are actually blunt. They get email, they didn't say hello, Rosalind, or anything. When's the next book? I go, okay. Actually, I should probably discuss this in an email to them and say, look, it does take a bit of time to do this.
Yes, I love it when it's the day of release and you're like, that was great. Is the next one out yet? And you're like,
Yeah. Yes, I mean, part of me wants to be cunning. And if I could possibly do it and had a time turner, I'd like to have one in the hopper, sort of secretly, so I could just publish it next month. Um, I don't think I'll ever get to that stage.
just for listeners, viewers out there, what we were talking about with the traditional or the indie or the hybrid. So nowadays there are two major routes into publishing, and one of them is the traditional route through which you would get an agent. So what you write a whole book, it will go to an agent. Getting an agent was often considered like the unicorn of publishing. Then once you've got an agent, your agent submits it to different publishers, and then they may or may not take that book, and that is how that gets published. And sometimes gets put into stores, sometimes doesn't. But that is a traditional publishing deal. With indie publishing, you are in charge of everything yourself. So you need to hire editors yourself, whereas with traditional publishing, a publishing company would do it. You would need to hire the cover artist, whereas with traditional publishing, you wouldn't have any say on your cover. And then you are responsible for distribution of your book as well. So that could be through Amazon or through all different ebooks. People also do lots of indie, sort of getting their books into indie bookshops as well, selling online direct. So that's the indie way of doing it, or the traditional way of doing it. So there are huge advantages and disadvantages to both ways, and it's very much a personal choice. My choice is I couldn't decide, so I'm a hybrid author, which means I have some of my books
Probably the best one.
which are traditionally published by traditional publishers, and some which I keep indie. But it's always a debate, and the fact is, what the best route is the best route for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's really that simple, and readers are understanding that more and more, as I think publishing companies as well, to be fair. I think they are getting to grasp with it, because like you said, there was a time when traditional publishers would be one book a year or one book every 2 years even.
Yeah.
Whereas indie authors who are now putting up four, five, six, sometimes more a year.
Well, they're
uh,
machines, as I say, I can't compete with that.
but it's each of their own way. But I think publishing companies are now adapting to that and are putting books out more frequently as well, because they're aware that indies are doing it. So yeah, it's a very interesting conversation, which obviously isn't the one we came on here for, but I know
Sorry,
that no, 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 not you
distracted
did.
you.
I was just saying, I just wanted to make sure that people knew what we were talking about
Yep.
when we mentioned these terms. So there you go. Hopefully you've learned a little bit, which is what WAC is about. So if you could give one piece of writing advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Um, Keep writing, I think. It sounds obvious, but finishing your first novel is crucial because otherwise there's nowhere else to go. Um, I'd also tell myself that after I've finished my book and it's published and people like it, hopefully, there's still a steep learning curve after that. And you've got to learn so many new skills. There's no great deadline, but you have to learn them in order to get your book in front of readers who hopefully will enjoy it. You've got to learn about marketing, and you mentioned selling direct and finding your readers, which in itself is a is difficult. I'd also tell myself to encourage myself to keep going that this job is uniquely wonderful. When you receive an email from a reader who thanks you for your book, for letting them escape into a story to get through some difficult time in their life, it's actually quite humbling, I think. So I would say, yes, this is going to be very hard work, and it is a full-time job, probably more than a full-time job. But being an author, from my point of view anyway, is the best job in the world. So hopefully that would encourage myself.
I think your younger self would absolutely keep going. There's no way they're going to give up after hearing that, are they? They are going to sit down and they are going to finish those books. Like, absolutely. I think that was absolutely lovely, because it's true. Everything you said there, it is a really special job that we get to do, that's not always quite the romantic vision people have of us sat in a coffee shop drinking, sipping away, relaxing with our sort of dreamy look. But
My original vision was sitting on a yacht in the Caribbean, but that hasn't quite come to pass yet.
fingers crossed, I get there.
Live in hope, live in hope.
But it is incredible. I said, just yeah, I'm grateful for every one of my readers. Acknowledgements always go to readers in the back of the book, for the very reason that we mean it. It's
Yes,
not
that's
like,
nice.
yeah, it's not just put in there because, oh, I should thank the reader. It's put in there because without the readers, we wouldn't be able to do this thing that we absolutely love. So we're incredibly grateful. Um,
Yes.
have you had any books which have been particularly hard not books, scenes in books, that have been particularly hard emotionally for you to write? Um, any out of the series that really stick in your mind?
Um, the most difficult scene, and emotionally for me, was one that's at the end of book five, the one that's coming out in a few months. It's mostly set in ancient Rome because there's a sort of time travel theme throughout the series. But at the end of the book, when Sophie, my heroine, gets back to 21st century London, she's reunited with her parents, who she believed were dead and gone. And that was a very difficult scene for me to write because my father died in 2020. My mother died last year. So I actually wrote it in floods of tears, which is probably not the best way of writing anything. But I just felt I had to write it. It was the right ending for that particular book for her. And it gave her a happy ending because she's about 20, 22 in the book. Um, so that, yes, that was difficult.
Yeah, I could imagine. I would say though, I think writing in floods of tears is how you get all that emotion from you onto the page. That's how you know it's genuine, I think. Yeah, if I'm not in floods, then I've not done justice. But I can imagine that was very hard and hopefully a little bit cathartic in a way, perhaps. But yes, I'm so very sorry for bringing up an emotionally
No,
charged.
it made me think about it, and there's a happy ending in a way because my mother's books were traditionally published in the 1980s, and I've managed to get the rights back from Random House, etc., etc., and I'm going to be able to republish them. They'll need new covers and so on. So in a way, she lives on in the books, which
That's
is
incredible. What genre?
short historical fiction.
Oh, yes, you said earlier.
Yeah, but it was basically it was post-Arthurian Britain.
Okay.
And I was also reminded how lucky we are, not just with the hybrid situation with the publishing industry at the moment. Going through her notes, I mean, she had to physically go everywhere to find out stuff. What do I do if I think, oh, I wonder what? I just click, and I thought, oh, that's what that fact is. That takes me like 10 seconds, and I go on to the next thing. Um,
Absolutely.
like in the 1980s, it was tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot with the historical I do. It's just, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot easier. I'm very grateful that I am not having to travel all these places to find out my sources and my research. Um, okay, so you have told us about your latest books coming out. We know where you're at. Just we're coming to the end of the podcast. So I wondered if you could just give us a quick lowdown on where we find your books, who your ideal readers that would love your books are. And yes, tell us a little bit about them.
If you're into time travel, fantasy, escapism, you want an adventure that goes over six books. Actually, there's going to be a second series. Then this might be the series for you. You can, and of course, also have to love dogs in fiction and in real life. Otherwise, just don't even think about going there. But um, so, best place to investigate my books and me is at rosalindtate.com. The ebooks are on Amazon, and they're exclusive to Amazon. So in Kindle Unlimited, so if you have a subscription, you can read the ebooks for free. The print books and the audiobooks are on my website to buy at a good price, but they're also available everywhere. You can also find me on Facebook, on TikTok, yes, even on TikTok, BookBub, and Goodreads. And if you go onto my website, rosalindtate.com, you can contact me through the contact form there.
Amazing. Absolutely brilliant. We'll put all the links on here, I think, somewhere down there, perhaps. But yes, please go and check out Rosalind's books. I know I'm going to go and buy book one now because I am a massive dog lover, and I'm a massive time travel fantasy lover as well. All the links are down below. And thank you so much for listening to WACI today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, and obviously you have, please, that was me being arrogant, wasn't it? Please can you click the little like and the subscribe so you don't miss me talking to any more of the wonderful authors on here. Thank you so much, Rosalind.